The cool thing is that when you hear the music, it will be live. Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. As promised, when you hear the music, it will be live. This is your friend, CL King, coming to you live from the High Definition Studios in Impactville. That's right. I am sitting atop of the glorious Ruth E. Plowden Legacy Chair, my foster mom. And every Monday night and Tuesday night and Thursday night, we get to have people on this show that come into your virtual living rooms who have been making an impact in life. That's what this show is about. That's what the sign says behind me, impacting life 24/7. And, you know, usually in the pre-show is a great time for me to get reconnected with someone and we kind of map out what we're going to do for the show. But man, this was an absolutely awesome pre-show because of my awesome guest. And we have hit it off from the very first moment. Professor Pete Alexander inspires hard driving leaders and other working professionals with over 100 innovative, effective stress relief strategies that help overcome their self-imposed obstacles and barriers to success. Y'all know something? Sometimes we are our own worst enemy. Professor Pete is a seasoned professional with over 35 years in sales, marketing, and entrepreneurial experience. Pete has battled the negative effects of stress head on and has developed the LIGHTEN. You got to stay around for that, ladies and gentlemen. The LIGHTEN stress relief model that motivates his peers to take action in only a few minutes per day. You guys are, listen, everybody's running the race. We are going and coming. I'm just back from Houston and everybody there seems to be stressed and in a hurry. And so back here in Impactville, I've had a chance to get with somebody that can help all of you around the country and around the world manage and understand how to deal with stress. Please welcome to our virtual studios, my friend all the way in Seattle, Washington, none other than Professor Pete Alexander. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you, CL, and thank you so much for that awesome intro. I loved it, and I really appreciate the time of all the listeners as well.
Man, I tell you what, we always wanted to feel like you are coming out of the limo, walking on the red carpet when you come to Impact Life 24/7.
I felt like that, so you did a great job.
Mission accomplished. Greg, are you with me, brother? We're glad to have the professor back, and Greg's got all of your links already established in the live chat. Way to go, VP. Thanks for doing that for us. And those of you who are tuning into Impact Life 24/7 live, the reason why we do this is to put pressure on me. See, I could very easily pre-record these and I could have 25 in a batch and just release them as we see necessary. But you know what? I like the pressure of what you see is what you get on Impacting Life 24/7. So we're very, very delighted. Professor Pete Alexander from Seattle, Washington is joining us. We had such a fantastic time in the pre-show. We talked everything from the Cleveland Browns to the LA Raiders to Steph Curry and my favorite team, the Golden State Warriors. So,
that's right.
So we're gonna try to stay on message for this show. And we've already talked to Professor Pete that, man, because of the volume of work that he has done and because of the research and the experience that he has, we definitely will have to have Professor Pete back again for a follow-up show. So, Professor, what we do first is we ask how people can contact you. I want them to know exactly how they can get up with you, Professor. So give us your info. How can people get up with Professor Pete Alexander?
Sure. Easiest way is to go to my website, petealexander.com. I'm also very active on LinkedIn. So hit me up there, Professor Pete Alexander. It's easy. I'm the only Professor Pete Alexander there of the whatever billion people that are on LinkedIn.
Yeah, Professor Pete Alexander. And you can go to petealexander.com. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And I've been there, ladies and gentlemen, literally all day. And so and I do that because I've canceled guests a couple times, I think 1 or 2 times when I wasn't prepared. I am never, ever going to bring anyone to these glorious studios ill prepared. And so, Professor Pete, I was in the lab all day studying you, my friend.
Well, I appreciate it. So I you're going to have to test me. I'm going to have to test you then.
Yeah, really. But it's open book because I got it right here on my screen.
Exactly. That's the best kind of test.
Yes. And Professor, one of the things that really has endeared me and our team to you is that you experienced this whole phenomena of stress in a very personal way, and it affected your life in a very dramatic and dynamic way. Why don't you give us in this first segment, why don't you give us kind of like the lead up to where everything really came to a head? Tell us a little bit about your childhood, your upbringing, and then how you were elbows deep in stress.
Oh, sure. Yeah. As you say, stress and I actually have had a lifelong relationship. I grew up in a very dysfunctional family, primarily through alcohol and other substance abuses. And sadly, for most of my childhood, I had to be the adult. So because my mom was just could not handle her alcohol. My dad, the two of them got divorced early on, and that was their second divorce from each other. They accumulated over their lifetimes 9 marriages, 7 divorces, and 1 widowing. So
Wow.
yeah, so they you can imagine, when you think about dysfunctional family, often the dictionary picture will be of my family. And what ended up happening is that I just internalized that, and I did everything I could to try and get out of that situation. And when I came out of that, I didn't like life very much. As a young adult in my 20s, I was very angry about the various things that happened to me. But I was able to get involved in a 12-step program for children of dysfunctional families. And that really saved my life in my 20s, because I not only learned to like myself, but I also learned to love myself. And that was a game changer for me. But it didn't help me deal with the day-to-day stressors of just work and relationships and things like that. And what ended up happening is back in 2008, I got a perfect storm of stressful activities happening. So I was running my business, as we all, that are entrepreneurs know how many hours of the day that takes.
Right.
And so my dad, he was in hospice and hadn't done anything with his affairs, needed that to be taken care of. My mom was having major surgery and didn't have insurance to help her with the physical therapy after that. My kids were small at that time and they wanted my attention, and my marriage was heading for a divorce. And it was a lot to shoulder, as you can imagine.
Right.
And what ended up happening is all those stressful things culminated in my diagnosis with stress-induced diabetes. The scary thing about that is no one in my family has diabetes, and it just came out of nowhere. I just started losing weight rapidly. And, at first I thought, wow, this is great. Especially in my mid 40s, I'm thinking I haven't, I no diets are working. All of a sudden, boom, this weight's coming off. But after that 30th pound came off, I thought, I better get this checked out. And sure enough, stress-induced diabetes. The crazy thing is, I didn't listen to my body about what stress was doing to it. Instead, what I did was what a lot of entrepreneurs and others do, is I continued to burn the candle at both ends for another 10 years until I ended up in the emergency room and an extended stay in ICU with a severe case of diabetic ketoacidosis. And for those listeners who don't know what that is, basically my body was eating itself alive because of my stress. And the crazy thing is, so the doctors said I was 1 hour from being comatose.
Oh my.
My blood sugars were so high that the medical grade glucometers couldn't read them. They estimated it was 8 to 10 times higher than it was supposed to be. And they gave me 6 liters of fluid. I was so dehydrated, 6 liters of fluid in the first hour and a half. And I never went to the bathroom. That's how dried out I was.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just burning up inside. It was nuts. And then, you would think that would have enough to say, I better do something different. No. At that time, I was working for a medical device company, and where I spent a big chunk of my career. And I had a micromanager boss. Now, when you're in your when you're in your early 50s and you have a micromanager boss,
Yeah.
that doesn't really fit
Doesn't
very well.
work,
I
right?
mean, yeah, you got somebody who doesn't trust the people who work for them. And so on my second day in ICU, I get a text from my micromanager boss saying, you have a webinar you need to run at 8 o'clock. So this is roughly 6 o'clock in the morning. What are you going to do about it? That's what this said. What are you going to do about it? And what did I do? I went into fix it mode, just like I always did. I grabbed my phone because what a surprise. I didn't have my work laptop with me in the ICU. And, and mind you, my boss knew I was in the ICU.
Oh my.
And so I'm sitting there pushing the envelope of trying to get this phone to reschedule this webinar. And the nurse on staff at that time, pretty much a complete stranger to me, she comes over, she checks my blood, and my numbers had finally come back down into more reasonable numbers of glucose numbers. They were still high, but at least the glucometer could read it, and it was not so scary. And as soon as she took my blood readings, it was like a 90-degree angle, and it shot straight back up. And she says to me, as a matter of fact, she says, you realize that's what put you in this hospital bed in the first place. And, I knew that there was something wrong, but had somebody, a loved one tell me this, or a friend tell me this, I wouldn't have heard it, because that's what we don't take it, for at face value. But a complete stranger telling me this, and I thought about that, and I realized that I was trading my health for my career, and that is a really bad trade. So what I ended up doing is I thought about that long and hard all day that day, and 2 days later, when I got out of the hospital, I resigned, and I just started working on myself, figuring out what can I do to reduce my stress, figuring out different tools and techniques. And what I found was that these different tools and techniques that I tried and experienced, most of them reduced my stress. Some of them didn't, but most of them did. And I found that not only was my stress going down, but my glucose numbers as a diabetic went down, my weight went down, and my energy level went way, way up. It was like I had discovered a fountain of youth.
So
and go ahead.
Well, the thing that's sparking my imagination here is, I can see, and Mike, I'm sure Mike Black, who is my co-host, who's chimed in, I know that we can see it with our mind's eye, Pete sitting in that hospital bed in the ICU, and many of us have go into hero mode when a lot of things are put on us, and Pete went into hero mode even in the ICU. And it was sometimes, like you just said, this is why I try to teach organizations about the value of an outside speaker. That's really what I am, as a motivational impact motivator, right? Well, it took somebody outside of your circle to say, hey, Pete, this is what got you here in the first place, buddy. And if you don't change that behavior, this may not be your last destination. It may be in the coroner's office. And man, that was a wake-up call for you, huh, Pete?
Oh, absolutely. And it's a great point that you make, CL. It really is. I mean, I can't tell you how many organizations I've worked for where, if you bring a consultant in and they say the same thing that an employee says, it's the consultant who you listen to, not the employee. It's just, it's crazy.
It's funny. Like, that's why you need that uncle in your family to tell your kids, listen to your mama and daddy, boy.
Hey, exactly.
Before
and
we,
I was just going to say,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, yeah, the crazy thing is, if you look at me from 2008 and you look at me 13 years later, except for the gray hair, I look younger than I looked 13 years ago. That is nuts.
Yeah. And Pete, I will say that you are just a tad bit older than me, and I think you look better than me. So there's that.
I wouldn't say that, CL, but I appreciate the compliment.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, again, we have in our virtual studios my friend and my really good friend, Pete Alexander. You can find him at PeteAlexander.com. He's got an amazing book. The book, he's the author of Lighten Your Day, Lighten Your Day. And we spent I told you this show was going to fly. We spent the first few minutes discussing Pete's, kind of like all the things that culminated to him being in a hospital bed, really an hour away from going into a coma. Is that what they said? You were an hour
That's
away
correct.
from a coma. And we don't want, this is why I knew there were some things that impeded Pete and I getting together the first time, but I knew we needed to have Professor Pete on this show because I know all of you out there who listen to Impact Life 24/7, and I know some of you are hard workers, and I know some of you are overdoing it. And so that's why we have Pete on the show. We're going to have a quick moment. I'm going to share my screen with you guys. We only do this for our live audience. Those of you who listen to the podcast, you never get to see this, but you always can hear it. I want you guys to hear a word about our amazing sponsors. And really, our sponsors are the ones who help us bring great Americans and great adults and great impactors into Impactville, like Pete Alexander. So just a quick word from our sponsors, and then we'll get right back to Pete Alexander, PeteAlexander.com. Our sponsors help us reach people from city to city, coast to coast, and around the world. Our gold sponsors, Michelle Perry. She is the host of the Successful Diligence podcast and best-selling author of The Pebble in My Shoe. You can connect with Michelle and get a copy of her book at successfuldiligence.com. Paula Cousson has dedicated her life volunteering in community youth programs such as the Young Marines. Paula believes that the greatest asset each young person has is at least one caring adult in their life. Donald Lamb is a gold sponsor, and he and his wife have happily been married for over 35 years. He is the proud father of one daughter and 3 sons. Donald honorably served his country over 22 years in the United States Army and retired with distinction. Active in his community, Donald is also the owner and operator of Mama's Boy Event Planning and Coordinating Services. Connect with Donald at facebook.com/Mama's Boy Events Coordinating. Our platinum sponsors, Gregory Smith. He is the author of 100 Simple Ways How to Manage a Property and Evidence Room. Get your copy today by reaching out to Gregory Smith on Facebook or email him at smithg1963@yahoo.com. Adrian Barker is the host of the Adrian Barker Speaks podcast, a life coach and CEO of Professional Global Etiquette. Please connect with her at professionalglobaletiquette.com. Mr. Mike Black from New Bern, North Carolina. He helps men throughout Eastern Carolina lead a faith-filled life. He is a compassionate leader in his church, a devoted husband and father. Dr. Nate Dunlap Jr. is the executive director of the PRF Institute. He is the author of What's Next, Preparing for Eternity, and Don't Leave Me Like This, Inspiration to Leave a Legacy. As a 501c3 nonprofit organization, the PRF Institute is blessed to be that premier stewardship-based teaching ministry that truly responds to the needs of families and communities around the country. Find Dr. Dunlap and his amazing team at prfinstitute.org. Poet Katrina McCain is the author of Because She Decided to Love. This is a collection of poetry and prose about love and its impact on every relationship. This raw, uncut poetry book addresses the themes of how we experience love through loss, hurt, pain, grief, and passion. Get your copy of her book today at poetKatrinaMcCain.com. If you would like to become a sponsor of Impacting Life 24/7, It's very simple. Just visit clkingspeaker.com. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Just visit clkingspeaker.com. And one day I'm going to get to jump off the stage while that commercial is playing. I want to thank all of our sponsors for partnering with us in this journey. I was telling Pete, Professor Pete, when we first began this, we're celebrating 200 episodes this coming Saturday. But when we first began this, it was nothing like this. And Mike Black, who's my co-host, he can attest to the fact that it was an absolute train wreck, probably the first 30 episodes. But here's what we understood. We understood that small steps lead to great distances, and we believe that if we impact one life one day at a time, and that's our core mission, that's our core purpose, Professor. If we just seek to impact one life one day at a time. I look at it like this. I brought Professor Pete Alexander on this show. There may be somebody listening in Eastern North Carolina. There may be somebody listening in Texas, in Seattle, Washington, or in the Philippines. That person who is battling stress will hear some amazing tips tonight and say, you know what? I got to turn this thing around because I'm headed for the same hospital bed that Professor Pete was. And so we're thankful to have Professor Pete Alexander in our virtual studios. You can find him very simply at PeteAlexander.com. I would love for you guys to go check him out. You can find him on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. And me and him are connected because we were talking football and we're Golden State Warrior fans. And we lowered our stress just in the pre-show. So that's how that's done.
Absolutely.
And so thank you guys. If you guys, those of you listening to our podcast, of course, his links will be in the bottom of the show notes. PeteAlexander.com. Go connect with him. He's an amazing man that can help you de-stress your life. So we were talking, Professor, about all the things that led up to you being in that hospital bed, and we were coming out on the other side. But let's before we get to the top of the mountain, let's talk about this, because we talked about this in the pre-show. Good stress and bad stress. Help us understand the anatomy of those two things.
That's a great question, CL. Because a lot of people I talk to and they say, if you can reduce your stress, and, they think, well, I can't reduce my stress, or, it's unrealistic to, be without stress at work in particular. And the reality is that's absolutely true. What we want to do is we want to look at it and say, okay, let's have a better understanding of good stress and bad stress. So good stress, the term is called eustress, EUSTRESS. And eustress is what helps us get things done at work. So if we're happy at work and we've got like certain projects that we have to get done and we know that we've got a deadline on those, though the eustress is going to help us meet those deadlines. And it's not when we're happy at work or we're happy in our relationship and we have things that can be stressful, that is not bad stress, because they're things that we want, things that we're motivated to do. So it's not a matter of getting away from stress from work. What we want to do is we want to avoid the negative or bad stress. A lot of people call that distress, DISTRESS. And bad stress comes in two flavors. One is rumination, and rumination is worrying about something that happened in the past. So, one of the most common ones is we have some guilt about either doing something or not doing something in the past. And if you've ever had that, CL, where, you keep beating yourself up, why did I do that? Or why I didn't do that? That is something that doesn't help us, because as we let that just stew and churn inside of us, we can't do anything about the past. It's done. It's gone, right? So, we have to realize that, okay, there's positive learnings from that. Whatever it was that we did or didn't do, okay, that's fine. It happened. Acknowledge it. Take the learning from that and don't do it in the future.
Right.
So let go of whatever is bothering you about that guilt. If let's say maybe it's something that you said to someone or didn't say to someone, well, maybe it's, you could write them, a message, and, whether it's a letter or, I've had people who say that, there's somebody in my past who passed away and I can't, I can't, make amends there. Well, what you can do is you can write a letter as if they were still alive, and that helps you get that out. So you want to you want to get rid of that guilt, anything that you're ruminating about in the past, because it's not going to help you and you can't change it. The other flavor is anxiety about the future. And what happens, if you think about it, is, let's say we have maybe a presentation we have to give, or maybe we have to have a difficult conversation with someone, and we start worrying about that. And we imagine the worst case scenario. Well, what happens is when we have that negative energy towards something in the future, chances are we're going to manifest that outcome because we're sending so much negative energy towards it. Instead, what I always recommend to people is, if you're worrying about something in the future that you like, let's say it's a difficult conversation with someone, imagine 15 minutes after you've had that conversation, and that the conversation had the best possible outcome. Because if we think about it, and we expect a magnificent outcome, chances are we're going to send that positive energy. And if we have the ability to manifest something, we're going to manifest something in a positive as opposed to the negative. So if we can eliminate ruminating about the past and anxiety about something that may or may not happen in the future, all the rest of the stress is a piece of cake. Wow. Those two, if we can take care of those, we are going to be smooth sailing for the rest of our lives.
Man, that is so powerful. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we are joined by the professor. We've got him in studios, ladies and gentlemen, Professor Pete Alexander. You can find this type of rich content at his website, petealexander.com. And, I used to do a little thing in some of my assemblies because, like I said, by trade, I'm a speaker. I don't know how I got into this podcast world. But I used to have students count 10 seconds into the future, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 months, 12 months into the future, whatever the case may be. And whenever they got there, it would always be right now. If you go 10 seconds into the future, when you get to number 10, what time is it? Well, it's right now. And oftentimes, what you just said was just so powerful, because oftentimes we find ourselves being gripped with anxiety about an outcome in the future that may or may not be negative. But guess what? How much of it can we really control by worrying about it, Professor?
Well, you can't. It's a great thing that we have to think about. First of all, what do we have control over?
Right.
The only thing we have control over is ourselves, our mindset, right? I mean, it really is. And I always mention this, given the fact that, COVID is still on a lot of people's minds, right? Because that's a classic one that's been a big stressor for a lot of people in their work, whether they're stuck at home or they don't know whether or not their kids are going to school or, whatever it happens to be. The problem is, when we are faced with a stressful situation, our human nature is to worry about all aspects of that stressful situation. All aspects of it, right?
Right. Go ahead. Yeah.
So
let me just interject here real quick, because you are hitting the nail on the head. What we found, even CL, ladies and gentlemen, found myself pulling in all this stuff to worry about that I had absolutely no control over.
Absolutely. And that's what we do. And what I always recommend is, in a situation like that, if you can do this, is what you do is you say, okay, I'm going to make 2 lists. I'm going to have a list of what I can't control, and I'm going to have a list of what I can control.
Right.
And so let's take COVID, for example. So what can't we control? Well, we can't control the government response to COVID. Right. Heck, we can't even control whether or not somebody's vaccinated nearby us, or wearing a mask or what have you, right? You
Right.
can't control who's on the plane. If you're taking a plane ride, you can't control if you're, in close proximity. So you have no control over that. That is not under your control.
Right.
However, what is under your control? Okay. One is you can make sure to keep yourself separated if you feel like you don't want to be exposed.
Right.
You can wear a mask, you can wash your hands, you can get vaccinated, whatever it happens to be.
Right.
Those are things that are under your control. And so what you do is you look at the list of what you can control, you look at the list of what you can't control, and what you do is in a mind share, if you think about it, it's fairly evenly split. We put our mind share 50% on what we can't control, 50% on what we can control. And if we can say, okay, that 50% of what we can't control, if we can move as much of that mindset over to focus on what we can control, what ends up happening is our stress will go way, way down, because when we feel like we are under control, when we feel like we can affect change, that's what reduces our stress. So why waste the energy on things we can't make a difference on?
Wow. Again, ladies and gentlemen, see, this is why we had the professor on the show, Professor Pete Alexander. Again, he is the author of Lighten Your Day. And you can find him at petealexander.com. I am going to get a copy of that book. He's got many ways that you can get it. You can get it a hard copy. You can download it on Kindle and all the other ways. You can download a PDF. And so he's made it very, very easy to get a copy of his book. And it's chock full of strategies, very, very simple. Like you can do them right today. You don't have to have a master's degree. You don't even have to be a professor to get some of these things started right away. I said I wanted to cover this. Time just flies, but I'm going to cover a couple of points here that you talk about on your amazing website. You talk about workplace stress costing employers $500 billion annually.
And that is actually low. That's what's documented, but it's really true. And if you think about it, what is that costing? Well, so think if anyone has ever had a job where they are overly stressed out, whether it's a bad boss, whether it's a not a good fit in terms of the role of the job, maybe it's hard, difficult coworkers, whatever it happens to be.
Right.
The issue is when we start stressing out, what happens is that our health becomes a concern. And so we might not be sleeping well. We might start catching colds or getting the flu, or we might get, some sort of stomach issues, whatever it happens to be. When we end up getting those, that distracts us, that takes us away from being fully productive at work. And so where these huge numbers show about stress is that it's the lost productivity that happens when our key employees can't do their job because their mindset, their mindset is out somewhere else because they're worried about something that they can't deal with. And so, how many times have you ever had to either you done it yourself or worked with someone who's physically there but not mentally there?
Right. And one of the things, another point that you added to that is you said as many as 10% of U.S. employees miss work due to job stress, stress related to their job, and they can be absent for as many as 21 days a month. What?
I know. That's mentally absent. So think about that. Yeah, because it's literally you're physically there, but you're not mentally there.
Right.
Because you just, think about it. If you've got too many things, like went back in 2008 when I had all these different things fall on me at once. I mean, literally, I had so much difficulty concentrating. I couldn't. So tasks that would normally take me, let's say 15 minutes, an hour to do, I couldn't get done. And they were just piling up and I couldn't do anything about it. It was a horrible feeling. And then, think about it, sorry to interrupt, but think about, then it's a compounding effect, because as you start not being able to address your responsibilities, whether it's at work, at home, etc., it starts to pile up and you feel more and more anxious about all the things that aren't getting done, and it just becomes overwhelming.
2 points here that I want to bring out. The last point on your website related to this says that stress is referred to as the health epidemic of the 21st century, according to the WHO. But then another point that stood out to me was stress-related health problems could be responsible for between 5 to 8% of annual healthcare costs in the U.S.
Yes.
Amounting to about $180 billion.
Yes, absolutely. So if you think about it, so if you were to ask a physician and you said, oh, okay, does stress cause you diabetes like me, or heart disease, or cancer? Technically, that is not the truth. What happens is there's this middle ground. Whenever we have something like negative stress that is ongoing over and over and over again, what that does in our bodies is it creates cellular inflammation. And it's that cellular inflammation that leads to chronic disease. And so, for me, it was diabetes, even though, I exercised regularly, no family history of it. My mom, she ended up when she was getting divorced from my dad the second time, she was under enormous stress. She ended up having to have a radical mastectomy. And, and the doctors told her she had 5 years to live at that point. She's still alive today, God, so I'm grateful for that. But she got cancer, and the cancer, she didn't have cancer before. And all of a sudden, boom, it just comes out of nowhere because she was so stressed. The cellular inflammation is really something. And the reality is, and what I always mention to people is, our bodies are going to let us know, give us plenty of warning that we're under stress. We just have to listen to it. So, whether it's the most common one that a lot of people get are back and shoulder stiffness. And that's because, if we're sitting at desks, when we're stressed, we tend to hunch over at our desks. And so that causes back and shoulder stiffness. I mentioned earlier about digestive disorders. If you're, no amount of Pepto-Bismol is helping it, or, a classic one is getting headaches and you're reaching for the Excedrin bottle every day or every other day instead of occasionally. That's a problem.
Yeah.
Not having, the weight fluctuations, either gaining or losing weight rapidly. Like I mentioned, that happened to me, 30 pounds in 30 days, and I wasn't dieting. What is, come on, that's telling me that there's something wrong. So we have to listen to our bodies. And when back in 2008, when I had that perfect storm, about 2 months before I started losing that weight, my back locked up so badly. And I could not, it was one of those ones where I couldn't sit down. I couldn't stand up. I couldn't lie down, nothing. It was constantly like this. And that was my body telling me, look, I'm sending you another warning. What did I do? I just kept on throwing the Bengay on it, and I just had to keep on working because that's what it was. Exactly. So listen to your body. Your body is going to tell you. We just have to realize, as long as we listen to our bodies and realize that our health is so important. Literally, CL, the thing that I hope people remember is that without your health, nothing else matters. Because if you think about it, the last time that you were really sick, let's say with the flu or something, chances are you probably didn't feel like doing anything other than lie in bed, right?
Right.
And so if all you can do is lie in bed, what good are you to your business, to your job, to your loved ones? It is so important. Health is paramount.
Your health is paramount. Health is wealth. And again, ladies and gentlemen, those of you tuning in to Impacting Life 24/7, I am joined by Professor Pete Alexander. You can find him at PeteAlexander.com. Go there and get his book. It's going to be new for me. I got to get an autographed copy. It's called Lighten Your Day. And before we get into the second half or the second quarter, we done talked over, but that's okay. I knew that was going to happen with Professor Pete. I want to share my screen with you guys just real quick one more time and let you guys hear about our other sponsors who have been responsible for helping bring this type of content to Impacting Life 24/7. And really, the reason why we do this is because they provide a financial partnership with us, and we want everyone to know that this is a partnership. We connect with them, they connect with us, and they help us in our mission to continue to impact one life, one day at a time. So here's a word from our sponsors. Every time you hear Impacting Life 24/7, it is brought to you in part by our amazing sponsors. Donald Skip Mondragon II, MD, is a platinum sponsor, and he is a 26-year Army veteran, National Veterans Wrestling Champion, a speaker, and author. He is the author of Wrestling Depression is Not for Wimps, Lessons Learned from an Amateur Wrestler's Fight to Triumph Over Depression. Contact him and book him today at wrestlingisnotforwimps.com. The Underdog Ninja Foundation are platinum sponsors. This was founded in 2020 by Javi and Jessica Madrigal, a husband and wife team that have been battling and overcoming heart disease for 18 years. Their personal story and experiences have led them to follow the calling of empowering, educating, and supporting those fighting heart disease. They have a remarkable platform and a dynamic story. Contact this amazing team at underdogninja.org. Belinda Tyson Linder has spent decades investing in people from all different backgrounds. She is a platinum sponsor. She has led inner city programs for disadvantaged youth, as well as being a mentor to young adults, married couples, individuals facing adversity. Belinda and her husband have built multiple 6- and 7-figure businesses and have trained leaders on having tenacity and character. Ultimately, Belinda cares about people. Bettina Carey is a platinum sponsor. Bettina Carey is a 4'9.5" Latina. She inspires and empowers women to create big results. They break through, they shatter their earning ceiling, kick self-imposed limitations to the curb, and live their legacies now. Whether she's coaching from a live or virtual stage or conferencing with a small cohort of bold women or men on the rise across from a conference table, her championship strategies and straight talk compel women and men to find their whole new gear and succeed beyond their wildest imaginations. Connect with Bettina today at weempoweryourlife.com. You've heard it here, folks. All of these people help us with Impacting Life 24/7. If you would like to join them, it's very simple. All you have to do is go to clkingspeaker.com. That is right, ladies and gentlemen, clkingspeaker.com. It only took me like 7,500 hours to make all those takes. So, this is an example. I got a mile-high stack of books in my studio here, and this is one. This is Greg's book, 100 Simple Ways How to Manage a Successful Property and Evidence Room. This is what we do. We try to promote the sponsors, but we also we try to over promote our guests. And one thing that I'm blessed to do every night is get to meet such amazing people, such as what we have tonight, Professor Pete Alexander. We have been, time has just been flying by. We have been talking about the various, the good stress, bad stress. We've talked about his life and how he was an hour away from being in a coma because of stress. He was in ICU, ladies and gentlemen, and still his over his micromanaging boss messaged him in ICU saying, "Are you going to get this message out to whatever you got to do?" And I'm just like, man, I would have had a few choice words for that supervisor. Nonetheless, Pete Alexander, go find him at PeteAlexander.com. Get a copy of his book, Enlighten Your Day. And what we want to do in this last segment is, Pete, let's do some practical app, because you are a coach. You give people strategies. Your book is full of 100 ways. Your Lighten strategy, we're going to try to get to that. But let's start with me. I'll be the guinea pig, and I'll do this live on air. And we didn't rehearse this, so Pete, I'm your client. I mean, make it happen, brother. Do your magic.
Perfect. So I'll just, with the one caveat that if you're driving in the car and you're listening to this, do not do this while you're behind the wheel of a car. Okay. Pull over if you want to participate in this one. But
and one other caveat, please don't have me get up.
no, not going to have you get up either. So because I see you're looking very sharp there, but I'm guessing that there's shorts on or something. I know it. So
Okay.
yes. So one of my fun activities that really helps right away, and it only takes a minute, is a visualization exercise. So what you do is close your eyes and take a deep breath in. And I want you to go in your mind to a place you like to relax. Maybe it's the beach, maybe it's a park, maybe it's a lake, maybe it's your backyard, maybe it's a spa. Wherever it is, go there in your mind and take in all of your senses. So what do you feel? Do you feel the sand or the grass under your feet? Maybe the sun on your face? And what do you smell? Do you smell maybe the fresh air? Maybe the lotion from the spa? What do you hear? Do you hear the water splashing on shore? Maybe the wind blowing through the trees? And what do you see? Do you see the blue sky? Maybe the green of the trees or the grass? Whatever it is, take it all in, and then take another deep breath in and open your eyes. Simple visualization. How did that work?
Oh man, that was cool. I was literally at the beach, because that's where our favorite place is to be, and I was just taking in. I was hearing the waves. My wife doesn't like the sand, but I don't mind the sand. And yeah, that is actually really powerful.
It is. And the great thing about something like that, other than, if you're driving in the car, the thing is that you can do this anywhere as long as you have 1 minute of silence. So if you think about it, this could work in, let's say you need to separate yourself from a situation, go to the bathroom. Sit there, do it in the bathroom. Or if you're pulling up and you're nervous about, maybe you're going to go in for an interview at a company, sit in your car and do this. Calm yourself, because it's a grounding exercise and it makes a huge difference. So it's basically just going to your happy place and giving yourself a little bit of calming experience to get you back to a level playing field.
That's powerful. Greg says in the comments, he says his happy place is his man cave. And, Greg has a killer man cave. His man cave is the envy of all man caves.
Oh,
except for when his son-in-law is sitting in his man cave watching his TV. Like, brother, what you doing in here? So if we can, and I know we got about 10 minutes, if we can we take a journey on the Lighten pathway?
Sure.
And if I can discuss each kind of element, and you give us some kind of like what your Lighten program and your Lighten concept involves. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right. So the first L, I mean, the L in Lighten is livelihood. What is that
Mhm.
about?
So it's basically your career. And the reality is, we, if you think about it, we spend more time on our career than just about anything else. And for some of us with workaholic tendencies, we will spend more time at work than our hours that we sleep.
Right.
So it's really critical that we find some balance there. And if you can have one or two techniques that take 1 minute, like the visualization, if that can help give you some balance, it is critical, because you want to make sure that you're not just go, 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 go non-stop. So it's critical in that, and so the first grouping of techniques that are in the book talk about things that are applicable to your career.
Ah, that's good because you're right. I'm thinking, okay, 8, 16, 24. In simple round numbers, you would say a third of your life, but those who are workaholics and have all this self-imposed stress are probably almost a half. If we look at it, like they can't let go of the job, and so your livelihood is an important part because it's a part of your life, and what you give us is strategies on how to deal with stress at your job, right?
Mhm. Absolutely. And it's just, all the different tips in the book can be used for various aspects, but there's a focus for each one. And the group that talk about your career, those are the ones that are helping you with career situations first and foremost.
I love that. You can again get a copy of Pete's book, Professor Pete Books, his book at petealexander.com. The book is Lighten Your Day. So we're going through the acronym Lighten. The next letter is I, imagination.
Yeah, so that's your conscious mind, and it's where your creativity exists, but it's only 5% of your brain. But here's the critical thing. It's where your inner critic lies and your control freak lies.
Ooh.
So, all of us have that inner critic, and how many times do we let our inner critic start telling us negative things, right?
Yeah.
So it is absolutely critical to tap into the creative side of your conscious mind and be creative with some, you know, situations where you can utilize techniques to help you overcome a stressful situation without letting that inner critic raise its ugly head. So the next grouping are for things that you can do from your conscious mind's perspective.
Boy, some of us is critical. Boy, I have to work on that one myself. Sometimes I find myself going to an event, and instead of enjoying the event, I'm criticizing it.
Absolutely. I mean, I was just on the phone with my mom earlier today, and she's we were talking about her getting Medicaid finally, and she's complaining because she has to go to this facility to have them run all of her tests and stuff. And I said, "What are you complaining about? You're getting better service."
Right,
You
right,
know,
right. All right. So the G in the acronym Lighten, what is the G? Is it stands for genius.
That's correct. It's your unconscious mind, which is the other 95% of your brain. And, we talked kind of around this CL earlier. Most of our stress is actually mental. So we're doing it to ourselves, sadly. No, the micromanager that I had when I was in ICU, I could have done, as you were suggesting, having some choice words and say, I'm not going to do that work, but I let that person affect me. So that was all a mental thing. And so you have to think about the fact that our unconscious mind is our autopilot. It runs our body 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we're all in touch with our unconscious, because if you think about the last time that you drove from, let's say, point A to point B and had absolutely no recollection of that drive,
Yeah.
that was your unconscious driving. So
Yeah.
it would know that, yeah, you have to brake, you have to turn, you have to do these things, but it's your autopilot. It's where your memories are stored, your habits are formed, your perception of the world lies. And in reality, it is where real and sustained change happens for the better. You have to get into the unconscious. And there's some amazing techniques that can really help you tap into that.
That's powerful. Again, ladies and gentlemen, tuning in to Impacting Life 24/7, whether live or on our podcast, which is carried in 41 states, 28 countries, and 27 platforms. We have as our guest Professor Pete Alexander. And Greg just says, I just purchased my book, signed copy coming. So Greg wants a signed copy. Yeah, that's right. I'm telling you, these guys always beat me to the draw. They beat me at everything. So you can get your copy at PeteAlexander.com. The next acronym in the LIGHTEN the next letter in the LIGHTEN acronym is H, and that stands for health.
That's correct. It's the inspiration for what I do today. And we talked about this earlier. Without your health, nothing else matters.
Right.
So, and if somebody didn't hear what we were talking about earlier, the fact is, if we are sick and all we feel like is lying in bed, we're not going to be able to get anything done. We're not going to be able to be there for our loved ones. We're not going to be able to be there to do our work. We're not going to be able to be there to run our businesses. It's the reality. Our health is so precious. Do not take it for granted. And so the techniques that are talked about for health, focus strictly on making sure that you listen to your body.
Wow. Yeah. And, I think this has been an awakening this COVID season, not just because of COVID, but, there's a lot of unhealthy people, just generally speaking, who have now said, okay, listen, I need to do something about these underlying conditions. I need to do something about sitting on the couch, this couchitis that I have. And I'm one of them. I have used this COVID season to say, you know what, I only get one shot at this thing. My health is my wealth, and I need to take care of it. So I'm going to be really interested in looking at those techniques in that section of the book. T is time.
Yep, that one is just like health. It is a precious asset of ours. The one thing with health, as we all know, once it's gone, what happens? You can't get it back.
Right.
So what I talk about in that chapter is the main message is to take action today, not tomorrow, not next week, not next month. We all have done that, where it's like, oh yeah, I'll get to it.
Yep.
What happens is, we as humans, change is not something that comes naturally to us. Mm-hmm. So all I suggest is you try something that may take 1 or 2 minutes today. If it works, great. Start doing it daily, because the compound benefits over time will be enormous for your health.
Oh, yeah.
But you have to start today. And as long as you do it as a daily habit, it will become a real habit for you, because what it shows in research is that a habit is formed in as early as 21 days and as long as, I think it's 66 days. Mm-hmm. But so you have to get into that habit. And, whether it's putting it in the calendar to remind you every day at a certain time or whatever it happens to be, you just be consistent for 1 or 2 minutes a day and you can have some amazing results.
Wow. It's powerful. Again, PeteAlexander.com. Get your copy of his book. He's the author of Lighten Your Day, and we're going through that acronym here. The E is environment.
Environment. So it's our surroundings. So think about it, whether it's our home, at work, maybe at school, if you're going to school. The situation around us is critical to our success. So, when we're working on a project that needs a lot of concentration, chances are we'll need some silence, a comfortable place to sit, minimal interruptions if possible, and understanding from those around you. I think about back when I was working on my PhD in the early 2000s. And, I was working good 60, 70 hours a week. And then in the evenings or on the weekends, I would focus on my research. And my kids were very small at that time, and they would just walk into my home office and want to play with Dad. And most of the time I would oblige, and I don't, I don't regret that one bit. It was some of the happiest times of my life. Right. But what I can tell you is that when I'd come back to my office and get back to my research, all I would do is stress about, oh my God, I'm so behind. Now what am I going to do?
Right,
So you want to make sure that your environment is conducive and supportive for your stress relief efforts.
Ooh, that's good. And man, I don't know if you touch on this in this element, but one of the things for me, because I work from home too, is having a organized and squared away area. If I let my area get out of, if I let the studio get out of control and stuff's all over the place, my stress level is through the roof.
Absolutely. So, organizing, making sure that things are in whatever order makes sense for you. That is a perfect example of taking care of yourself and reducing your stress.
Wow, the environment's powerful, and
Mhm.
the Zen music works too. I mean, I'm a music guy, so I like to. My wife's like, "Why do you always have to have music playing?" It's just I don't know.
Mhm.
Music is therapeutic for me. And then last in the lightened acronym is network. Talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's basically your relationship. So the way you want to think about that is the people in your life matter. So when we're stressed, we tend to be less patient, more irritable, less able to listen or show interest or empathy to those around us.
Mhm.
So what you want to do is not take those relationships for granted. You want to make sure that that this part of your life is in alignment with the other components that we talked about in the light model. So it's absolutely critical. And so there's several techniques there to make sure that you don't take the people in your life for matter. Make sure that you realize and take advantage of those people in a positive way.
You know, let me do this real quick, ladies and gentlemen. I know staff and team that we're a few minutes over, but this is important, and I feel that it's important for us to do. Dr. Pete Alexander, Professor Pete Alexander. You can find him at petealexander.com. That's petealexander.com. We were just going over some of the elements in his book, Lighten Your Day. But I want to show you and give you just a few nuggets of what people have said about his book. There's one thing to talk about it, and it's another thing what people say about you behind your back. It's really, really the real deal. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
And a reference, for a speaker, sometimes a reference is worth the payment, is worth the check. So here's what someone says. It says, Alexander wrote a book that provides excellent techniques for managing stress in many different scenarios. The book includes great resources to use for various types of stressful situations. I believe readers will find it very helpful and easy. It is an easy to use guide for managing stress and practicing mindful living. One other one says, I am lucky. I don't personally suffer from stress, but many of my clients, colleagues, and friends do. This is why I was interested to read this book, and I was not disappointed. Alexander created a simple model for managing stress, or actually more for removing it. His Lighten model is simple to understand and follow, and it is explained in enough details to use without going too deep. This book is practical. I especially like the 8th chapter that describes the different kinds of daily stressful situations and how to best use this model to handle them. A useful handbook of techniques for anyone dealing with stress directly or trying to assist others to avoid it. And that is what some people have said, and he's got many, many more. You can go on his website, petealexander.com, to see other recommendations and comments. But when I looked at that, because like I said, I've been researching him all day, and I said, man, you know what? That's what I like. And I hope when you go to Apple Podcasts, you will go, Pete, and leave me a review about what you thought about your time here. But
You bet.
yeah, but hearing that, ladies and gentlemen, a couple things stand out that Pete understood. Him being a professor, him being a doctor, he understands that sometimes you don't need to be down in the weeds. I need to pick this up, and I need to be able to enact something right now. I'm getting ready to go give a brief. I got a presentation. I got this. Let me see here. Ooh, chapter 8 says, this is only going to take me 2 minutes. I'm going to devote the 2 minutes, and I'm going to go in there and I'm going to knock it out the park, because Pete Alexander has given us a tool to use, and that is absolutely phenomenal. Pete, what do you think about that when people say that about your book?
I'm always just grateful and honored that people get that much value from it, because what I found was that in most cases prior to me writing that book, most people had, the stress relief books were more academic in nature, or they went into a long detail. And the reality is, as you said, we've got 5 minutes before a stressful situation. What can I do? And it literally, even though I've got it segmented by different areas of your life, you could technically, let's say you got something at work, you could grab something in the environment thing section, and it might be a tool that just works for you. And really, the reality is, as you talked about at the beginning of the show, CL, about helping one person. The reality of that book is, if you can find one technique that takes you a couple of minutes and it works for you, run with it. Just run with it, because you will benefit. Yeah.
Well, listen, Greg has already ordered your book. I'm going to get mine on order. I want mine signed, and I want you to say something cooler in mine than you say in Greg's, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, this has been an absolutely amazing broadcast hour with Dr. Pete Alexander. He is the author of Lighten Your Day, and you can find that book at PeteAlexander.com. Go find him on all social media platforms. He has taken something that he experienced and done massive amounts of research to put something in your hands that you can begin using on day one. I want you to connect with him because he's got some other amazing on-ramps to other things that he offers the public dealing with stress. What I do at this point, Steve, Pete, I know you probably can hear the music in your ears, but I'd like for you to give a word of encouragement to our audience. There's a lot of stressors out here, so I'd like for you to take this time and give a word of encouragement. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you for that. I would just remind everybody that self-care is critically important. You got to take care of yourself first. Don't be the person who ends up in the bed and can't do anything to help take care of the responsibilities from the people, the company, the organizations that are relying on you. You have to take care of yourself first in order to be able to take care of your responsibilities. So definitely do that. And it doesn't take a lot. You need to do it. Take action today.
Take action today. That's right. He said, time. Don't wait till tomorrow. Don't put it off. Those heart palpitations and those headaches that you have in every morning. He talked about it, man. I know some people that can't function without an Excedrin in the morning. Yeah. So take action today. PeteAlexander.com. The book is called Lighten Your Day. I hope, Pete, because you're a podcast host too, I hope, because Pete is in high demand. He's been all over, seen on multiple platforms. I hope that you could say to your next place that you go, CL King and that team treated me really good.
Absolutely. I have had an absolute blast, CL. You are dynamite, and I just greatly appreciate being on your show.
Yes, sir. And we will do it again. This is a relationship now. So we'll schedule maybe something in the beginning of the year, or maybe Christmas time is always a stressful time. We might think about that too.
Holidays are really stressful.
We might have to do a special Christmas edition of how to de-stress. My friend and guest, Pete Alexander, Professor Pete Alexander. You can find him at PeteAlexander.com. Thank you so much for making my job super easy and providing such a great platform for us to connect with and share with our audience, Pete.
Well, thank you, CL. It's been an absolute pleasure.
All right. Well, we'll do this again. And remember, Greg's ordered his book, but make mine cooler, okay? Have a great night, Pete.
Thanks, CL. You too.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, that was our guest, Pete Alexander, Professor Pete Alexander. And you can find him at PeteAlexander.com. Okay, this is what we want you to understand, that I'll talk about this on Saturday. You guys got to come and watch us and tune in Saturday at 7:30 for our celebration of 200 episodes. But you understand that high quality, dynamically impactful people enjoy coming on this show. And what we have tried to do is create a cathedral of resources where one night you could be talking about how to manage a property and evidence firm. The next night, you could be talking about village vibes. The next night, you could be discussing sketched by design. The next night, you could understand because she decided to love. The next night, it could be caregiver 2.0. Right? The next night, it could be nurse, eat, and repeat. The next night, it could be lost, travel, found. Are y'all following me? The next night, it could be what's next, preparing for eternity. The next night, it could be forever, fit, and flexible. You understand what I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen? This is literally a cathedral of resources. And I don't have time now because we're closing out. I can't list everybody's book, but I may do that on Saturday. My point is that we are trying in this movement to really make an impact. I want someone to watch this show that has gone through stress, and I want them to connect with Professor Pete Alexander. Just go to PeteAlexander.com. He's got a ton of free stuff that he's given away because he truly believes in what he's doing. And some of you some of us are out here working 70, 80, 90 hours seemingly a week. And we're you know what I mean? We're losing our health. We're unhealthy. We have no time for anything else. And we feel like we're the guy on the or girl on the volleyball court running from all over, trying to hit the ball in everybody else's position. We got to be the hero. And we're slowly killing ourselves. That's why I had Professor Pete on. I brought him to you guys. We brought him to you as a resource of impact. If your life has been impacted over these past 200 shows, then really you should sow $1,000 seed. No, I'm just, I'm just teasing. Woo! That I felt something on that, but that was just, I'm just teasing y'all. No, really, if you've had an impact and this show has impacted you in any way, then our mission has been accomplished. Because when Greg and I, when it was just me and him, and it wasn't 41 states and 28 countries, we said, man, our goal is just to try to impact some lives. And then we narrowed it down. Our goal is when we wake up to make an impact in one life, one day at a time. So I thank Danny. I thank Mike Black. I thank Katrina. Happy birthday, Katrina McCain. I thank Greg Smith, the VP, the man at the 5,000-yard line, the sniper. And I thank all of our sponsors and all of our listeners who help Impacting Life 24/7 go. Because I do believe that Pete enjoyed himself. And we want people to come on here and want to come back. I've been on shows where they couldn't pay me to go back. and it's speaking events that I'm like, nope, never again. But we're creating that type of environment, that type of culture here where it's not combative. It's not always about, controversy. We talk about life issues, but we have a genre here, y'all. We got a theme, we got a mode that we're in that's working for us. And I showed Mariah tonight on TikTok. There's somebody that was on TikTok with a bowl of bugs, maggots and worms and all this kind of stuff. And 24,000 people were watching that person live. They were waiting to see if they would eat this bowl of worms and stuff. And I showed Mariah, I said, man, and she said, Dad, they're never going to bite it. They're never even going to eat it. It's just a gimmick. And so I'm like, so 24,000 people ain't got nothing else to do than to watch someone with a bowl of worms hold it and pretend like they're going to eat it. Man, we in the wrong business, Danny. We need to obviously start having bowls of worms on this show. But we don't care about that. We don't care about that. That's not our mission. Our mission is one life, one day at a time. And how we do that is consistently showing up Monday night, Tuesday night, and Thursday night. So we will be back in the studios tomorrow night, which is Friday, for our midnight motivation. We got 4 dynamic speakers that are going to rock the house. We created this. We're doing this because there's so much negativity out there in the world. And we said, you know what? We want to create another platform where we give speakers who love to speak an opportunity to come and inspire you, because y'all hear my mouth all the time. And then before that, we've got Tracy Cook from Australia. She's going to be on the show tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we're going to talk about all things podcasting. We're going to talk about her life of overcoming major adversity. Then Saturday at 7:30, we'll be right back in the studios for our 200th episode celebration. I told y'all we had a jam-packed week, and I haven't stressed. It's been good. I'm chilling. So thank you, guys. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Katrina. Happy birthday. Thank you, Mike Black, Mike B, my co-host. We will see y'all tomorrow night on Impacting Life 24/7. God bless you.